Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello. Welcome back. Chase Thomas podcast, taping this on a Thursday evening. Returning guest. That's fun to say. Not first timer. Returning guest, Jimmy Hyams of 991 The Sports Animal and The Sports Source and everywhere else over Knoxville for the last 30 plus years. Jimmy, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, Chase. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Okay, Jimmy, you got to give us a fill-in since the month or so away. What have you been doing? Have you still been playing pickleball a lot? Have you been at the Holston River a little bit more? Have you gotten some traveling in? What has semi-retirement looked like for you of late?
It's been a lot of golf, a lot of tennis, and some pickleball as well.
Okay.
Earlier today, I sat out on my boat dock and watched the sunset. That's been a fun thing to do. So staying really active, doing a little bit of yard work and stuff. So, and keeping up with Tennessee football and reading the articles and stuff and looking at some of the stats about Tennessee's upcoming opponent.
Okay, well, we'll get into that because it's interesting to see how the national media has kind of shifted on this game, and honestly, how I've shifted as the week has gone on here. So let's first get into what it looks like against A&M, because before we even get into the game itself, Gary Danielson this week made some headlines in Knoxville that ruffled some feathers, a lot of Tennessee fans' feathers, about whether or not Tennessee in Neyland Stadium specifically was just like any other SEC environment. And when fans really got upset was when like Ole Miss was cited as an example, where no offense against Ole Miss, but the Grove might just be a little bit different than Neyland Stadium. When you heard that and when you thought about the difference between playing inside Neyland Stadium versus other SEC venues, do you think it is a significantly different home field advantage than a lot of the other ones in the SEC?
Then a lot of the other ones, absolutely. It's a better home field advantage than Ole Miss or Mississippi State or Arkansas or Kentucky. So are there some stadiums in the SEC as loud? Yes. But think about this. And this, I'll be curious to see how A&M handles this. Alabama plays at A&M and they have 9 pre-snap penalties. South Carolina plays at Tennessee and they had a few. I can't remember the exact number. Tennessee goes to Florida and has 6 pre-snap penalties. So I do think the home crowd plays a significant role in this. And I think Tennessee's home crowd at Neyland Stadium is about as good as anywhere in the SEC or about as good as anywhere in the country. So I would strongly disagree with Gary Danielson.
It was weird because he's called so many games here. And when you've been here, it's funny too, because I remember Georgia fans where Kirby had to get Georgia fans up, and Eric Angel, colleague, getting some Georgia fans angry about the atmosphere that he founded, which again wasn't wrong. It's an opinion. He played there. It's a little bit different when it's a player saying it wasn't as intimidating. That's straight from somebody who was there. And also he had success inside Stanford Stadium, but it's also different where I think a lot of people, and I tell friends even back home in Atlanta and stuff, is the difference with the Neyland is it's a Coliseum feel. It's kind of like a Roman type deal with how high it goes, how big it is. And I mean, I was in the building with my dad 2 weeks ago, and that was the loudest. I think that was, outside of the Alabama game, the loudest Tennessee has been in the 3 years that I've been here. So, I mean, it's just different, and I think that's okay. Like, I think it's hard to replicate what it's like in Neyland when it's going, and I think Saturday afternoon it's going to be another one of those examples where it's really going. Now, the rain potentially might make things a little bit interesting with Checker Neyland, but we'll see how that goes. But I think there's a built-in advantage with just the structure, don't you?
Well, I do, and I think it is a very loud venue. And look, Tennessee has to give the fans reasons to cheer. Under Jeremy Pruitt, there weren't a whole lot of reasons to cheer. Under Josh Heupel, there have been a lot of reasons to cheer. I mean, the electric atmosphere they had. Look, I know the Ole Miss ending was embarrassing for Tennessee in the way the fans behaved, but that was an incredible atmosphere for that game. The Alabama game was an incredible atmosphere. I thought the South Carolina game was a great atmosphere. So I don't know how high on the decibel level you have to get before you're in that elite company. But when it impacts the opponent's offense, they have pre-snap penalties or they're late getting off the ball. That, to me, is a huge home field advantage.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm probably not as fearful of going to Kentucky, going to Mizzou this year, where, yeah, it's not great to get both on the road this year with the kind of year that Tennessee's had thus far and blowing the game early against Florida. But I don't think you're going to have those kind of pre-snap penalties that Tennessee found themselves in against Florida, and probably will next week against Alabama and Tuscaloosa. It's just different. Like we've seen it, and I don't think that that's something that really hurts this Tennessee team is when things get loud at some of those bigger venues and they put themselves in third and long, especially with this group with Joe Milton instead of Hendon Hooker. But when you look at this upcoming matchup with Texas A&M, has your opinion, have you found yourself, as you've dug into the numbers, dug into where Tennessee's at coming out of the bye, what you saw from A&M with Max Johnson now a week ago, have you shifted back and forth? Did you have a thought coming out of A&M Alabama about which way this game was going to go and it's changed, or have you been pretty steadfast in how you feel this game goes on Saturday?
I've been pretty steadfast in how I felt like the game might go. Now, obviously, the personification of a team could change from game one to now. With A&M, I thought that this was a 50-50 game for Tennessee going into the season. And I still think it's pretty much a 50-50 game. But there is one thing that has happened that has shifted my opinion a little bit, and that is this. A&M has played one true road game. I don't count playing Arkansas and Arlington. That's not a true road game. They played one true road game. It was in Miami, and they gave up 48 points. Now, I don't think Tennessee's going to score 48 points. I think A&M's defense is too good for that. But to me, what has A&M proven as far as going on the road? In my opinion, nothing. They got whipped by Miami pretty soundly. And so I think to me, that gives Tennessee a bit of an advantage. And maybe I'm putting too much stock in A&M's performance at Miami. And I know that Tyler Van Dyke was red hot in that game. But the fact they gave up that many points, that many passing yards, it makes me wonder what type of a road team A&M is. Are they 10 points better at home, 14 points better at home than on the road? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out this Saturday. But I do think that plays to Tennessee's advantage in that A&M went on the road and got whipped badly.
If Tennessee was going to A&M this weekend, even out of the bye, where would you see this game going?
A&M. I'd take A&M.
No hesitation there.
Yeah, A&M's better than Florida. And Tennessee couldn't handle the noise there. They couldn't handle the pre-snap penalties there. They didn't play a very good game there. I think Tennessee probably play a better game against A&M, but I would favor A&M. And I look back to Alabama having 9 pre-snap penalties. Alabama either had 13 or 14 penalties in the game. Now, they're good enough to overcome it. In my opinion, Tennessee would not be. So I would take A&M at College Station.
I think, too, something I was thinking about where I was telling Matt on the show last night where if Connor Wegman doesn't get hurt, I think I still pick A&M outright this weekend. Max Johnson, he's a capable backup, but they're kind of in that Joe Milton thing where they're still the training wheels, and he kind of will do some stuff where you're like, no, let's stay in structure a little bit here. And it's just different. You can see it where Connor Wegman looked like a Heisman type quarterback, even when he was dealing, took some crazy shots in that Miami game, but he looked like a really, really good quarterback, the 5-star pedigree that came in to College Station with. And I think Tennessee would have had real problems with him with this secondary. Max Johnson doesn't scare me as much. And I think something that I'm curious from your perspective, if this game's close, do you think Tennessee wins? Because the spread's 3.5. And what I look at is because Josh Heupel's been so good at home, and when he wins at home, he's winning big. Usually things get ugly for teams where the crowd gets really into it. You have like a Doneiko Slaughter big hit and a pick. There's some kind of big moment. Spencer Rattler almost runs out of the back of the end zone. You can see how the things get ugly in a hurry for teams on the road against Josh Heupel and this group when they come into Knoxville, or it goes the other way. And I don't know if Tennessee, it's a good sign if we're looking at this game and it's 24-24 going into the fourth. I think that's actually a pretty bad omen for Tennessee's chances. Do you share that, or do you think they can win a really close game throughout in Neyland?
Well, I think they can win a close game, and I've actually predicted a close game.
Okay.
I don't see a whole lot of points in this game, which in and of itself
is dangerous.
It would be a close game. Yeah. So I just don't see a lot of points. I think A&M's defense is really good, in particular when they're playing at home. I don't think they will play as poorly as they did at Miami on defense. I don't know that Joe Milton is going to be able to score on if they have 12 possessions. I don't know that he's going to get 5 touchdowns out of that. I doubt it. And I don't think A&M. I think Tennessee defense is pretty good. I don't think A&M is going to go up down the field.
I don't either.
And I think Max Johnson. I think Johnson. He had 60 yards rushing the other day. He's probably a little bit more mobile than Wegman, but there was a reason Wegman won the job. Now Johnson's been around a while. I think he's a 5th-year guy who's had some good moments. But going on the road, I wonder about how he's going to play at Neyland Stadium. So I see a low-scoring game relatively, and I see Tennessee pulling it out. The spread is 3.5. I've got Tennessee barely covering that spread.
There's just something about it that if Tennessee barely covers it, I think they lose. I think if I'm sitting,
then they won't cover it.
Well, I mean, like if it's 3-point game in the fourth quarter, or if it's in the 20s in the fourth quarter, I'm turning to my wife and I'm going, this is not going to end well. This is just not going to end well, because it's one thing when it's Bama and you're going back and forth in the fourth quarter. It's another thing entirely when it's a team like Texas A&M or South Carolina or Kentucky or somebody. I think Tennessee needs to be up early, because I think you need some confidence here, because Bru McCoy out for the year. We have no idea what kind of difference that's going to make. Yeah. Something tells me it's going to make a pretty big difference, especially with the screens on the edge, that they were just doing so much of that side-to-side stuff with Squirrel, and they were throwing that to Bru's way, because Bru's just such a good body blocking wide receiver on that side. You're going to have to trust Jacob Warren a lot more, McAllen Castles a lot more. Yeah. Caleb Webb has to play a bunch. There's just no real alternative, and we'll see what the Dante Thornton experience looks like. But I think at this point, you have to just kind of better luck next year with the hamstring and everything else. It seems like it's going to be really hard to get him going consistently at this point in the year. And if you're kind of operating under that assumption, I don't know. I think so much of this is sneaky on Joe, and we talked about it last month about how important it was for Joe to have a good game in the Swamp for Tennessee to have a chance, Jimmy. I think this is a sneaky big game for Joe, because not only is it at home and the expectations are high here that you're trying to keep this season afloat, because the East is still right there. You only have the one Florida loss. You still have Georgia coming into town next month. Like, the season's still in front of you. You lose this, and then you have Alabama the next week. You still got at Mizzou and at Kentucky, and it doesn't get any easier down the stretch here. I think he has to actually have a really good game. I don't think he can be the game manager that he was 2 weeks ago, just handing it off and letting Dylan Sampson and Jalen Wright and company do all the work and relying on his one deep shot being one where Squirrel didn't even see the ball. Like, you got really lucky there as the only deep shot where Squirrel was awesome and answered it honestly about, like, I don't know, it just hit my leg and I was like, I got it. I don't think he can get away with that. So if we're looking at this game, Jimmy, and it's the third quarter and I send you a text, I'm like, we have 0 explosive plays downfield. I think that means Tennessee's lost the game. I don't think Joe can get away with that. Do you agree with it?
No, I think he has to play well. I also think he has to run the ball 5 to 8, maybe 10 times. And I could see where against South Carolina, he was a little bit banged up, so he didn't run it much. And as we all saw that 81-yard run against Texas San Antonio, I think for them to be efficient in the zone read, he's got to keep it a few times. In fact, the first play of the game, I might just tell him, you're keeping it. You're going to run the football. Yeah. But he has got to run the football some in that zone read. He's got to read it right also.
Yeah.
So he's got to make some plays there. He's got to hit some intermediate passes or some deep throws. I do think Tennessee will throw a couple of flanker screens. I'm a big advocate of putting D. Williams on offense. My goodness, that guy is so good with the ball under his hand. You could run a speed sweep or a reverse. You could run those flanker screens out there that they throw, or you can tell him you're running the deep route, just a go route. That's all he's got to do. And look, that's 3 plays for him right there. The other times he could be sort of a decoy. Maybe you fake it to him on a reverse, or you just throw it to somebody else. That doesn't mean he has to come out of the game. But if you can get 3 or 4 routes for him to run and just get him the football, goodness, I think he could make some dynamic plays, just like I think a Dylan Sampson can. Now, to your point about if it's close, you think A&M wins, that gets down to which team or maybe even which quarterback you trust the most to make the play to win the game. I'll be curious about this. A&M's got the best run defense in the SEC. Auburn ran for a number of yards against them, but they did it with their quarterback. So I don't – I think Milton has to run some. He's not going to run for as many yards as Auburn's quarterbacks did. But the other thing is he's got Tennessee has got to run the ball effectively with their three-headed monster. And if they can hit some passes and force A&M to have 5 or 6 in the box, then I think Tennessee will have some success. They're not going to run for 200 – what are they averaging, 230 yards a game? They're not running for that. But if they can get in that 140 range, 150 range running the football, I think it'll be a successful day for Tennessee.
Isn't it weird to think about where we're at? Where, I mean, the stats of just, this is still the worst passing Josh Heupel team he's ever had as a head coach. Like, that's just where we're at right now. And Tennessee fans are like, you're winning. So it's just, it's a testament to Heupel and the staff for finding unique ways to win with just kind of the limitations this year and the injuries and this, that, and the other on offense. But I think this is just kind of a really bad matchup for Tennessee, where Texas A&M secondary is so bad. And I never thought I would say this in the Heupel era, where I'm like, yeah, that's not great that the weakness for Texas A&M to attack and for Tennessee to have a great day scoring 40-plus points is against the secondary and going deep, because I don't know if this staff trusts Joe. I don't know if they have the personnel to attack in that fashion. I don't know what that looks like. I haven't seen Tennessee, and we're in mid-October, win a football game that way this year. I don't know if they can win a football game that way this year, but it's so important that they show Tennessee fans and the SEC that they can win, because that's the difference in what they can be. Because we will be able to recalibrate our expectations for Tennessee based on how this game goes. Because if they are not able to take advantage of the intermediate stuff, of stuff deep, of Joe being 3rd and 8 and connecting on important throws and keeping drives alive and not going 3 and out a lot, I think it instills a lot of confidence, and it shows this team can be a lot more complete on offense than they'd shown previously. But if they don't take advantage and they are just still running it on 3rd and 9 and just taking 4th and 2 and hoping for the best, I don't know if that's a recipe for disaster or a recipe for success the rest of the way. And I also think it signals that, like, this season, you've got to recalibrate your expectations, because that that switch is not coming on at any point this year. If you're not doing it against this A&M secondary at home, I don't know when the vertical passing game's coming. And then at that point, you're like, what is the point of Joe Milton the rest of the way if you can't take advantage of those kind of deep shots and be the full offense that you want to be, the full fulcrum?
Now, Chase, they got Connecticut coming up.
That's true. Well, coming up, it's what, 4 weeks? When is Connecticut?
Yeah, so they got a vertical game against Connecticut. Now, come on, don't be. I'll say this, though, to your point. If Tennessee doesn't beat A&M, Tennessee's going to lose at least 4 games this year. And that'll be a disappointing season. That'll be disappointing. I don't see Tennessee winning at Alabama. I don't see them beating Georgia. And if they lose to A&M, look, I'm not going to give them the Kentucky game. Is it potential 5 losses if they lose to A&M? Potentially. But I think they will definitely, in my opinion, I strongly feel they would lose at least 4 if they don't win this game. Now, with some of the other factors, A&M secondary is vulnerable. You got to give Joe Milton time to throw. A&M leads the SEC in sacks. They lead the SEC in tackles for loss. Tennessee's really good at not having negative plays in the run game. They have some sacks, but as far as the run game, they don't have many negative plays. So things stay ahead of the chains. Here's another stat. Look, this off the top of my head, so I may not have these numbers exactly right. But against Texas San Antonio, Tennessee ran 30-something first down plays. They gained 395 yards on first downs. Now, 5 of those were plays of at least 40 yards. One of them was the 81-yard run by Milton. And then against South Carolina, they had roughly 235 yards on first down plays. If they can be successful on first downs, not like they did against San Antonio, no, they're not going to do that again probably ever. But if they can have success like they did against South Carolina, where they're picking up 7, 8, 12 yards on first down, I think they have a chance to have a pretty good offensive outpouring against Texas A&M.
It's interesting you use the pouring word there, because I'm curious, if it's pouring down rain, this afternoon. Do you think that benefits Tennessee more? Is that something that Tennessee fans should be rooting for? Because I think it is. I think you actually want this to be messy. You want Max Johnson to be sliding around and not being able to plant his feet and get the ball to those talented Texas A&M receivers and attacking this Tennessee secondary. And I think it also just helps Tennessee have to stick to the run game and find ways to win where they're comfortable. Part of me really does feel like you want this to be a mud fest if you're Tennessee. Do you agree?
Okay, here's my concern about that position, and I don't have anything to back it up with. This is just pure speculation on my part.
I love it.
If it's raining, is the crowd not as engaged or as loud?
No, I think it's as loud. I think it will be as loud.
I just wonder if there are more fans up there trying to stay dry than they are yelling their lungs out.
I think if it was cold, I'd be more concerned. Like if it was 30s, 20s and pouring down rain, then yeah, I think the atmosphere would be significantly hit. I don't think it's going to be like that. It's 60s and pouring down rain. I think that enough fans would still be pretty active, especially with a Checker Neyland vibe and everything else. I think that it would still be pretty loud.
Okay. If we go with what you're saying, I don't think that, I just don't know that I think the rainy conditions are going to be favorable for either team. That's hard to gauge that.
Yeah.
I mean, why would it favor Tennessee? Why would it favor A&M? I don't know. I do think that if Tennessee can have some success running the football, and I don't know, do you run better in the rain? Probably not. I don't know. I don't.
I think it's harder to tackle Dylan Sampson in the rain. I don't want to tackle Dylan Sampson in space either way, but in the rain, I don't know if I want to do that.
Well, is Tennessee going to give him enough touches? My goodness. I don't understand that one. And not playing him against Florida was ridiculous. But anyway, that's a whole nother argument. I think Sampson has emerged as their best running back, followed closely by Jalen Wright, and then Jabari Small is the third best running back. When Jabari Small is your third best running back, you got a pretty good running back room, right?
Yeah.
But I think with Cooper Mays back, I think that helps the cohesiveness of the offensive line. I think it helps the run game. I think it helps in pass protection.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big factor. And I got asked this earlier, and I don't know if there's a great answer. Is it more important to have Doneiko Slaughter in that secondary versus having Bru McCoy at receiver? We all know Bru McCoy's out, okay? But how important is Slaughter to that secondary? He is their best tackler back there. He's their strongest hitter back there. So how much would he mean to the secondary? I think he could help. And besides, A&M they like to run the football. So Slaughter can come up and run support from the secondary to help Tennessee. So I think Slaughter being 100% would be very beneficial to Tennessee.
I'll say I think it's Bru. Heupel said all the right things where it's like next man up and we're going to plug and play. And I'm like, look, I think Caleb Webb, he's built almost the exact same frame as Cedric Tillman. I think that's asking a lot of this kid in the middle of the year to just come in and be an instant contributor, jumpstart this vertical passing game, do stuff that Bru did. Bru was the kind of the safety pin for Joe Milton because he's just huge. He's built like a defensive end. He played defensive end in high school. Like he was a go up and get it kind of guy, and they don't have that. Like Caleb Webb's not that wide. He's not that big. I don't know how you replace him. Like Tennessee's shown they can get by with Doneiko and because Gabe Judy-Lawley I think has sneaky been a lot better the last few weeks. So I think that's helped a little bit there. But Doneiko, like you said, the tackling and what he does in space and being more physical with corners and just being kind of a good alternative to Kamal. Because as we know with Kamal and his tackling, it's just a little bit, there are two very different kinds of cornerbacks on an island over there. But with Bru, with just how much they need to be efficient through the air on Saturday, to not have Bru McCoy, the most talented guy there, and who does stuff even when he doesn't have the ball in his hands, when he's setting up squirrel down the field with blocks and whoever else is over there, I think that's a bigger loss to me. I think Bru is a humongous loss.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. He's a loss, humongous. How many catches does he have?
Yeah.
Now,
catches is
but to your point, he's a really good blocker. He's a very physical player. I'll give you that. And I don't think Caleb Webb and I don't think Chaz Nimrod are going to replace him. Again, I'm going to mention D. Williams. I think he could be a factor.
You're all in on D. You're going to be looking for him, Jimmy. You are going to be checking for number 3. You're going to be like, where is my D. Williams in the slot?
And I'm going to be yelling for the press box, and Josh will hear me. But here's a guy, though, I think really needs to step up, and that's Ramel Keaton.
Yeah.
I think he's the guy. Now, you could also argue, well, maybe it's the tight ends. Maybe it's Warren. Maybe it's Castles. Maybe they get more involved in the passing game.
Or Ethan Davis, who we haven't seen yet.
Yeah, and I don't know how healthy he is. Yeah. I think that's a part of it. But I think Ramel Keaton is a guy that's got to step up and emerge. He has shown flashes of being really good. His best 3 games last year were against Florida, Alabama, and Clemson.
Yeah.
Really the best teams they played. So it's time for him to step up and play like he can, and he needs to come up big in a big game.
He really has been forgotten about, and I don't know if it's an increased spotlight on Ramel, just the way teams are playing him. Ramel's not getting the same opportunities. I mean, super talented kid, and I mean, the Florida catch was an all-timer. I mean, this is another one of those games that's set up for Ramel, and he was someone who had the best rapport coming into the year with Joe. Like, that was, I think, a lot of our off-season expectations was that because he was with the second team and worked with Joe so much on that second unit, like they had the most, they went to Times Square together. They have this close relationship, and it just has not unfolded like that at all. The stuff that we saw in the Orange Bowl and everywhere else, like it hasn't worked out that way.
I wonder how much that drop in the opener has impacted him with perhaps even his confidence. I don't know. Maybe he's gotten over that, but he's a guy that really has to emerge. And here's another guy too, Squirrel White. Squirrel White is their most, in my opinion, their most dynamic receiver with the ball under his arms. He can make that first guy miss on the bubble screen or the flanker screens. He can go downfield. He's quick as a squirrel, but he can go downfield and make the long catches as well. He's a guy, and I hate to say he's got to step up because what do you have, 9 targets and 9 catches?
Yeah, he's like, I actually needed to step down. Like my body, I'm like 5'8", 130. Like I can't keep taking these hits. Actually, I need someone else to step up. What is Jimmy Hyams trying to do here? I don't need 13 catches a day.
So he's already doing his job. I'm looking for others that he's already stepped up. Yeah. Others need to emerge, and Keaton fits that bill, and maybe the tight ends will be more part of the throw game as well.
Yeah, if you had to guess, though, to put a bow on all of it, Jimmy, the reason Tennessee wins this game on Saturday, coming out on Sports Search, talking about it on Sunday morning, your number one reason will be what?
They were more effective in running the football than Texas A&M was. I think that's going to be a big part of it, because if Tennessee can contain the A&M run game, which I think they can, and they force them to be a little bit more one-dimensional, that means they can get after Max Johnson. A&M leads the SEC in sacks. I think Tennessee is second. Tennessee might even lead in sacks per game. It's pretty close.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
So I think the team that has the upper hand running the football. Look, Tennessee can't go out there. I think A&M gives up 85 yards a game rushing. Tennessee won't win if they run for only 85 yards. They've got to get into the mid 100s, that 140 range, 150 range, or I don't think they will beat Texas A&M. So I think the team that has the most success running the football is going to emerge victorious.
If on Sunday morning you're having your morning coffee, Jimmy, and Texas A&M won this game, why did Texas A&M win it?
I'm going to say because probably 3 reasons. One, they contained Tennessee's run game. Secondly, they put a lot of heat on Joe Milton and forced him into some errant throws, and Milton ends up not playing very well. Here would be the third factor. A&M handled the crowd. A&M doesn't have 9 pre-snap penalties. They don't have 6 pre-snap penalties. They don't have hardly any. They're not affected by the crowd with their offense. They don't start behind the chains with a bunch of illegal procedures and make it 1st and 15. I would say those 3 reasons would be why A&M would win.
If you're on the Big Orange kickoff on Saturday morning, you're polling fans who walk by, Jimmy, what do you think their expectations will be? Because that's what I found so interesting too, is like, I think a lot of fans are pretty split. What temperature in Knoxville have you gotten? Do you think the fans will be understanding if they do lose a close game, and this won't be the sky is falling, or do they look at it as like, the season's getting away from us pretty quickly, and we're in real trouble going forward? What do you think the temperature will be on Saturday?
It'll be because if you don't win this game, I think the fans would look at it the way we've been looking at it, and that is that Tennessee's going to lose at least 4 games this year, maybe 5. And so after that 11-win season, you've taken a pretty good step back.
Yeah.
So I think there are going to be some people, okay, well, they won because of Hendon Hooker. Okay. Well, I don't know that that's necessarily fair because you got Nico Imaleva coming in the wings. But I do think, and you know this, Jason, fans in the media overreact.
That doesn't sound like us at all, Jimmy. I don't know what you mean, Jimmy. Yeah.
Whether it's a win or loss. So if Tennessee loses, I think that puts a lot of doubt in the fans' minds about, now, wait a minute, where is the direction of this team? If you don't beat A&M, you're probably not going to beat Alabama. You're probably not going to beat Georgia. And then, heck, Kentucky on the road, that's going to be a difficult. I think there's going to be a lot of angst if Tennessee doesn't win it, and a lot of disappointment from the fans who have been accustomed to watching Josh Heupel's offense being outstanding, leading the nation a year ago. And that's another thing, too. If Tennessee doesn't win this football game, it's going to be because they probably didn't score more than 20 or 24 points.
I mean, he hasn't won when he hasn't scored at least 30. And the march to 30 is going to be, I think it's just going to be a lot more arduous than people think. And if it's not, then they probably win big. I will be extremely excited to see how it unfolds either way. But I don't know. I don't have a good feel, Jimmy. Like, I think Tennessee wins, but I also think Tennessee wins like something like 41-24, where I think that's what it has to be. I think it has to be something like that for Tennessee to win. If it's 27-27 midway through the fourth, I have a bad feeling. I'll be lying there on my couch. I'll just be like, I just looking over my wife. I'm like, this has all the makings of a really rough Sunday morning in Knoxville. That's where my gut is. But we shall see how everything unfolds. Jimmy, anything to plug as we wrap up here this fine Thursday evening, sir?
Well, I do a variety of shows. I've got on the Sports Animal, I do the Roundtable with Heath Schuler. That's Friday from 4 to 5. I'll be doing Football Finds with Fawad Reveiz at about probably 9 o'clock tomorrow night. Sorry, Saturday night. Then Sunday morning, I'll be on with Tim Urban. We'll be doing our show from 8 to 10 a.m., Sports Sound Off, Sunday Sports Sound Off. And then I'll do the Sports Source from 11 a.m. to 12:30. So my weekends are pretty busy. I'm not doing a whole lot other than that, but the weekends are pretty busy. But I enjoy it. I love college football and love covering Tennessee.
There you go. Jimmy Hyams, thank you as always. Have a fun, exciting weekend. Hopefully the Vols pull it out and it's a positive one on Sunday morning. And I will talk to you very soon.
Thanks,